The regular season is heating up, new stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection on a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's that easy. Let it fly to turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Watch your favorite players and get paid doing it this basketball season. See your entries make progress during the game or make new entries for the second half and the fourth quarter. 3-pointers, assists, rebounds, and everything in between are yours for the taking. Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
So our podcast is called Right and Wrong.
Are these your notes?
These
Are these your notes about what we're going to say?
Anything.
Nailed it.
Is the short answer.
So how many novels did you not finish?
Oh my God, so many.
It was perfect. What's she talking about? This is nonsense.
Ooh, a spicy question. I love it.
This is it, guys. The big secret to getting published is you have to write a good book. You heard it here first. Hello and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. I'm Jamie, and joining me today is Megan Carroll, literary agent at Watson Little. Hi, Megan. Welcome to the show.
Hello, hi. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. How's it going?
It's not too bad. It's a very busy time in the publishing calendar at the moment, so full on, but good, positive.
Yeah. Busy's good. Let's talk about your journey in publishing. What was your path to becoming a literary agent? Where did it begin?
Well, in truth, I didn't know what literary agents were at all when I was at university doing English, obviously, as so many of us did. Yeah. I didn't know anything about literary agents. I mean, looking back, I probably should have assumed that there was some type of role that was selling these books to publishers. I don't know what I thought was going on. But I didn't really know anything about it at all. And I kind of had a sense that I wanted to work in publishing, but I was relatively open about what role that might be. And after graduating, I applied for a lot of jobs and was unsuccessful in many. And I spotted a work experience placement at Watson Little, and I kind of applied in a sort of blind desperation for any kind of role, not really knowing what I was getting myself into. And then I kind of just stayed there for since that time, and I didn't leave.
Oh, okay.
I had a brief 3 months at another literary agency to kind of confirm what I thought I already knew, which was that this maybe was the option for me. And then I came back, and I've been there ever since.
Oh, okay. That was Caroline Sheldon, your brief.
Yes, yeah, brief. It was, yeah.
Okay. So you never thought about, was it the sort of writing, was that something that kind of drew you towards working in publishing, or did you just want to work in the industry?
I just wanted to work in the industry. I mean, I'm not a writer.
Okay.
I'm a useless writer. There'll never be an announcement in the bookseller about a book that I've secretly written and sold for any money. Writing is not really my thing. Reading always was, and I kind of thought, is there a way to do a job that I will hopefully, fingers crossed, on the whole, enjoy? And it was kind of just that. And I thought about editorial, and I thought about marketing, loads of different parts of publishing, really. Literary agencies was not on my agenda. But yeah, I knew I wanted to be in the industry, not as a writer, but sort of as a facilitator of writers, perhaps.
Yeah. And you do, I mean, as the role of an agent now involves, for the most part, editorial as well.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, and do you also do editorial outside of your work as an agent, as a freelance thing?
Sometimes I do, yeah. And I mean, less so depending on how busy I am.
Sure.
With the agenting side of things. But it's one of those skills that I think you need to continually train. It's like a muscle, I think, and you need to keep yourself in that mindset. And each project is edited kind of really differently. So I like to keep my toe in there
Oh, okay.
either through my sort of full-time role or in other ways.
I get that, because editing feels like, even though you need to give space between each book, everything you work on, it feels like something that you would be rusty at if you didn't do it for very long.
Yeah, I think it would feel like quite a task to get your head back around what a big edit looks like if you were separating that out by a long time. I mean, there's so rarely a long time between them, but sometimes, occasionally, as rare it is, there is.
Yeah. So going back to your path, which is quite neat through publishing, it's really Watson Little, and then you dipped a toe somewhere else, then went back to Watson Little. Mm-hmm. You started out as an intern, then you became an assistant, and then you became a literary agent. How many years was it? How long do you work sort of in the industry before you reach a point where you can become an agent?
For me, I started in 2014 at Watson Little, and I think it was 2018 maybe that I was made an associate. But I was doing associate-esque tasks sooner than that. I think publishing is a bit of not bad for that kind of thing, but I think it's just kind of happens that you are working ahead of the job that you have, perhaps, and for a couple of months before you kind of get it. So it was maybe 3.5 years or so, and then I was starting to take people on. Then became an associate for 2 years, I think, 2 or 3 years. Now I forget what years it's been. I mean, the last two have felt like very odd.
Forgotten what year it is.
And then full-time agenting from I think September 2020.
Okay.
As just a full-time agent and just doing that all the time.
Yeah, that's not the first time I've heard that, because it's as you could sort of progress through the life cycle of publishing, it is often assistant going into agent, but the assistant, as you say, there's a sort of blurred line where you became an agent like as an assistant, but before you were officially an agent.
Yeah, definitely. And I think in that sort of interim where you're associate agent, I think it's probably the hardest you work in the whole process, because you're just balancing two jobs and you don't want either to slip. You know, you're really consciously wanting to move ahead, but not wanting to do that in a way that means, you know, the other tasks that you're needing to do and all the other things that are really important are getting sort of left by the wayside. So those couple of years where I was an associate were probably the most full on. I say that now, and now it's going to I'm going to tempt fate now, and I'm going to have the busiest year of my life.
Yeah. Well, from what I've gathered from the outside looking in, being a literary agent is more than a full-time job in many ways. Yeah,
it is. Someone should have told me that at the beginning. Maybe that would have been useful information to know early doors.
Yeah, 100%. Because it's easy to forget for writers and people submitting that you reading scripts and manuscripts and things as prospective new clients, that is sort of not the core of your role. The core of your role is to look after the clients you already have.
Definitely, yeah. You need to prioritize different things, and taking on new authors is not always very high on that priority list, depending on, you know, all the other things that are going on. But your clients are the priority, and I think that needs to be the case. Otherwise, why would anyone new want to be on your list if you weren't prioritizing your clients? You don't want to get them in the door and then think, oh, I've done my job now. I've got you on the list, and now I can find someone else. Move on to the next new thing. But it's a lot of prioritizing your existing clients, which is, you know, what we're doing it for. We want to work with those people and get the best for them. But it is more than a 9 to 5, because it's really difficult to switch off, I've found. And the longer I do it, every time I read anything in the newspaper, or I see something on the news or see something online, I think, oh, could that be a book? And I think, maybe please switch that off. Please just enjoy scrolling mindlessly on social media like other people can. But I'm just constantly thinking, could that be a book? Could that be something? Should I email that person?
Yeah. I get that just listening to music, or you watching something on television, and you're like, oh, what if this was slightly different, and then that was a whole other story.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really difficult to switch that part of your brain off.
So are you mentioned that writing's not for you, but you do editorial.
Mm-hmm.
Are you quite hands-on with your clients in terms of the editorial?
It depends. It depends what they need. But yes,
Okay.
I can be. If something needs, a couple of goes before we send it out to editors, then I'm very happy to do that. I try not to do too much and get them kind of quite fatigued by the whole experience, because it will be happening when we sell that book again. They're going to go through another few rounds. They're going to have another opinion. And I try to gauge when is the time where they feel happy and confident about it, but there's still some gas in the tank for them to go a little bit further with somebody in the next round. So it's quite a delicate balance into, you don't want to go too far and sort of have them go, look, if you sell this book, I just want you to know I now hate it and I'd like to never look at it again. You've gone too far if we're there.
Yeah.
Scale it back.
That's Zadie Smith, right? Zadie Smith hates her old books.
I can see how people do. I really can.
Yeah.
Because by the time it comes out, the amount of times the author has read that book is just so many. It's countless. It's more than I think you'd ever think. And you don't get to a point as well where you think, okay, it's word perfect, I don't want to change anything. That instinct is still there. You'll still look at it and go, oh no, I hate that bit, and I wish I'd changed that, and that word's in the wrong place. So I can see why authors just need to be like, I need to leave that book now. I just can't look at it again. I need to just pretend like it didn't happen and move on. I mean, I'm sure not all of them feel that way.
I was actually talking to a couple of my friends yesterday who both of them have one book out, and they were saying that one of them said that she had never read her own book like as in its book form because she's too terrified that there would be something wrong or something that should have been changed, or there's just literally just a typo or something.
Yeah, I can believe that. It must, because it's too late then, and you just think,
yeah,
oh, God.
Exactly. Yeah, and you've already read it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
So.
And you probably don't even see the typos because you know what word should be there.
Yeah.
And other people point them out in Amazon reviews really helpfully, and you think, I don't need to know that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, if you find a typo, don't tag the author and tell them that there's a typo. There's nothing they can do about it.
No, and it will play on their mind forever.
Mm-hmm.
Just leave them in blissful ignorance of any typos. If anything, let the editors know, let the publishing house know so they can change it in a reprint, but goodness, don't tell the author.
Yeah, exactly. Tag the publishers in it. They probably won't do anything about it, but they might. Let's move on to submissions. This is something I always like to ask agents when they come on the show. The submission package at Watson Little is pretty in line with industry standard. It's the cover letter, the synopsis, 10,000 words for fiction, and then non-fiction is the usual details and sample stuff. When you receive a submission, what order do you go through it, and where do you attribute the most weight?
So I will read the cover letter first to sort of assess first if it's something I'm looking for. I mean, as much of information as we put on the website as to what we're looking for. Some people still just think, I know you haven't asked for XYZ, but I thought my book might be the thing that tips you over the edge. So I read the cover letter first, one, to get a sense of if it's something I want to look for and if it's something I'm keen to see. And then two, to get a sense of, okay, what is it? What book is it you're pitching? And if it's like, this is a romance, this is these are the characters, or this is a YA fantasy, get a sense of, okay, what book is it that they're about to deliver to me? And then I go on to the sample chapters and think, okay, are they delivering what they promised? Are they giving me what they've pitched? And then if I get to the end of the sample chapters and I like it, if I really, really like it, then I don't look at the synopsis, because I just want to read, I want spoiler-free kind of reading of the full manuscript. If I'm I like it, but I'm not sure where it's going, and I just want to check, what the end story might sort of pan out as, then I'll look at the synopsis. But the synopsis always last. Always last. Okay.
Are there any sort of really great things that you like to see in a cover letter that really sort of help you gauge where this submission is going?
I really like comparison titles. And I think, and I say titles, but they can really be anything. I mean, a lot more people in recent years have been using TV series and movies, all sorts of different types of storytelling to compare and to sort of place it somewhere in a wider readership. And they're really useful. They're always useful. They're not as useful when you sort of say, oh, this is George Orwell meets, something else that's been out for years and years. And you think, I highly doubt that it is any of those things, but also give me something slightly more recent, something that people have bought in the last couple of years maybe, and that's on the shelves now. But
Sure.
comp titles are always really useful, and a sort of as boring as it is, like a short hooky pitch, but that's really only when it's a genre. Is it a crime? Is it a romance? Is it something really clean cut that's going to fit into a genre in the way that you'd expect? With a romance, the two people have to get together. If they're not doing that, then you're not delivering what I think I want from this.
Okay, yeah.
So a pitch, that's kind of important. I mean, the cover letters that come through to our submissions are also different, that you kind of, as an agent, you just have to kind of think, I've got to take each one as it is. The information that this author is telling me is important to them. Let me see what I can get out of this cover letter. I don't really mind if there's loads of different elements to it, or you've added extra information, or you've not. Maybe if you haven't put in comp titles, that's fine. But I just kind of look for, what is this book about? Who are the characters? What is the reason why I should care about them or want to read more? And that, I suppose, that tends to come through in the pitch or an interesting comparison. I mean, the best comparisons are ones that are like really insane books that are not at all alike, or like a really random film meets a book, and you think, what? How? Those always make me read on when I'm like, what?
Yeah, I get, because you're like, I don't see how this could work.
Yeah, but I want it. Yeah, I want it to work. Please show me how.
Yeah. So do you think that when people do put comparisons in the cover letters, would you sort of say, be careful when talking about older works, like if you're doing sort of classics like George Orwell or something like that?
I think so. I mean, those kind of classic books, what is it that they're really saying about your story? Because they're so of their own type. They're not. What is it about that book that you are using as your comparison? Is it that it's dystopian, in which case use something more recent? Is it some kind of character thing? Is it a style thing? It's so difficult for us to gauge. What is it about, this D.H. Lawrence book that you're telling me this book is about? I mean, I can't get anything from that. They're so out of the realm of genre in a specific sense. The classics kind of becomes the genre that they're in, and it's hard to kind of get anything from them. They're not very useful as comparisons. Yeah,
I guess the other issue is, and the further back you go, the worse this will be, is that all of the, let's stick with George Orwell, 1984. Like, so many huge books have already sort of been derived from that. So now, like, you're referencing something, but there's already been tons of books that are referencing that one thing. Do you think that's kind of a big issue with doing classics as well?
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. And it's with comparison titles and using those, like, I was inspired by XYZ, or this is for readers of, and you list your authors. Who is the readership of George Orwell's book? Who is that? I couldn't tell you.
That's everyone, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's everyone that went to school or was kind of coerced into reading a George Orwell. George Orwell's great. George Orwell's great, but it's difficult for us to gauge, okay, where do you see this? Who do you see this being sold to? I mean, it's really very hard to pin down who buys classic books just as a reader, and not because maybe they feel like they should have read it at school, or everyone's talking about this book they've never read, and they have a bit of a guilt pile. I mean, I've got a guilt pile of classic books I've not read, and it's very big.
Me too.
I shan't reveal any of them, but it's difficult to gauge who they see at the end of the line of, between us and between a bookseller and a bookshop. George Orwell is just not a very easy indication as to where you feel like that book is being placed into someone's hand at the end.
Yeah, I guess one way you could look at it, it's a bit sort of corporate, is to say, what is the brand? And then you look at someone like George Orwell, or, go even crazy with it, say Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, but what is Shakespeare's brand? So like, if you're comparing yourself to that, what does that mean for a brand? Whereas you can take a modern author like Stephen King, and it's quite clear what his brand is, who his readership is, where the books are being sold, this, that, the other.
Yeah, exactly. And you can use big names. I mean, there's no problem with using big names, like Stephen King, but it does. The issue with it is that then you're putting yourself directly in contrast to someone of that vein, which is difficult for then when that agent reads your sample material. If the only names you've given them to consider in line with yours is, people like Stephen King, it's going to be difficult for you to be Stephen King in that moment.
Sure.
Unless you are amazing. Unless I found the next Stephen King, in which case I'd be delighted and I'd be just thrilled about it. But just put yourself in line with people where, you want to make your sample material look incredible and look like it is really hitting those spots, and it is going to be for fans of these readers. And that's not to say that, Stephen King is miles better than someone with one debut book that you use as a comparison, but he's such a juggernaut. He's gone beyond, he is a brand, as you say. It's such a big thing to kind of compare yourself to. So it's difficult to kind of put that into context when we're trying to look at a submission and judge, okay, who will buy this? Yeah.
So basically with comparisons, think about what you're doing. Don't go too big. Don't go too old. Give it some good thought. I wonder if we could, going back to the submission bit at first, I wonder if you could shed some light on something for me. Why is it that, and it's pretty standard throughout the industry, why is it that in the submission package, most agencies ask for 10,000 words for fiction and not simply the full manuscript?
That's a good question. And when I'm enjoying a manuscript, I think, oh God, I wish I didn't have to then request and wait for the rest of this, because I could then just read as my heart desires. But I think purely on a logistical standpoint, 10,000, if the expectation is that we'll read 10,000, it's just a lot easier for us to get through those submissions and make those decisions slightly quicker.
Hello, this is Ohavia Phillips.
And I'm Dennis Reed.
And as members of Charlotte's Black community, we're proud to call the Queen City home.
And with Charlotte Love Notes, we're sharing our love story and spotlighting the Black-owned businesses that make this city so special.
That's right, the restaurants, shops, and more that we love and express the craft and culture of Charlotte's Black community.
So head to charlottesgotalot.com to see our love notes and plan your trip.
And show your love to the community that inspires us.
I mean, we get so many submissions. I was talking to my assistant the other day, and she thinks we've had about 200 a week since the start of this year, which is kind of
it's a lot of reading.
Insane. And I think if the expectation there was that you could send your full, I think people would expect and want a lot more feedback than we maybe have time to offer. And it would be difficult for us to kind of manage our time into reading all those things, because there are a lot of submissions that we'll read and we think, yeah, this is, this first 10,000 is good, and we'll be umming and ahhing, and, some decision will be made whether we request that full or we don't request that full based on lots of different things. Yeah. And I think if we had loads of fulls, I mean, the guilt I have when I have fulls that I know I've been late on is so large that if I had that for every submission we receive, I don't think I'd ever sleep or get anything done, because I would just be so, I mean, it's hard enough sort of saying no to someone with 10,000 words. I think I'd find it even more difficult to reason no if they'd sent me the full. So I think, I mean, I don't know who started it, this sort of standard, this is what you send.
I was talking to Joe Molt from Skylark, and at Skylark they just asked for the full. straight up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I said to her, I was like, oh, well, that's not in line with the standards. So why is it that way? And she said, well, it just cuts out lots of steps. And in the end, we read as much as we need to. So as long as the worry is that if you say 10,000, you're sort of making a promise and you're like, I'm going to read this 10,000 words.
Yeah.
But realistically, you don't need to read a full manuscript to know if that's not going to work with, how your list or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I just thought it was interesting. And she thought that the reason that it exists and it is the standard, which makes all the sense in the world, is that before we did everything on email, it was just blocks of paper, right? So 10,000 is a reasonable wedge of paper to deal with in the post, I guess.
Thinking about it, yeah, it used to be post. I say recently, I mean, it was several years ago now. Recently. A few years ago, I remember us putting on the website that we were not accepting in post submissions anymore. And I didn't really, at the time, as I started in 2014, so it wasn't like we were receiving loads, but God, yeah, I mean, What's Knit was 50 years old, so there must have been a time when they were receiving that volume of submissions physically. And I suppose, yeah, by not asking for the full, you're at least cutting down the amount of posts you're receiving by just having 10,000 words.
Or like just being able to fit it through the post box.
Yeah,
I guess,
just it must be a nightmare.
Yeah. But she was saying she loves that because it kind of, as you said, it kind of skips a step when you read the 10,000 words and then you're like, oh, now I have to request the rest. And that's like a day or two before you'll get that.
Yeah, and you kind of lose that momentum. Not always, and obviously you can get it back. I mean, part of our job is to read things a million times and still have the same amount of enthusiasm for it every time. But there are times where I've emailed for a full and maybe the author's on holiday or something like that, and I get an out of office and I think, oh God, now I've got to wait for however many days, and I just keep sort of checking my emails obsessively, which must be exactly what they're doing on their end when they're sending out submissions. So maybe that's good that we get a bit of a taste of our own medicine.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's interesting. Interesting to hear. Your career, publishing as an industry. Do you have any advice for publishing hopefuls, people looking to start a career in that world?
To sort of get yourself in there.
Yeah, foot in the door.
I mean, it's tricky. It's very tricky because there's so many people wanting to work in publishing, and I think it's changing somewhat. But there was a very long time where it was very London centric, and so geographically there was a bit of a barrier to getting in, which I think is changing now. I would say, we recently interviewed for an assistant actually at What's Knit, and I'd say the best thing to do is to kind of really immerse yourself in the industry. Just get your hands on the bookseller, read those articles online, get a sense of what is going on and what the state of play is as best you can. We saw a lot of people that had interned at loads of places that hadn't really done any of that, and it comes down to sort of a passion for what you want to do, and as sort of boring as that sounds, just really really love it and show that. And I think on a logistical level, there's so many different things to join, sort of Society of Young Publishers, and there's loads of different groups and forums that you can be a part of. And I think there's a huge Publishing Hopefuls Facebook group, which obviously I can't join and snoop in because I would know that I wasn't a publishing hopeful. But there's loads of different groups that are offering that kind of thing. I mean, it is difficult, and it's become even more so in the last 2 years because all the normal programs that all of our companies would be running, work experience, internships, were just not prioritised during the pandemic, which is a real shame because we were all adjusting to working from home, and then to kind of prioritise sorting out how an intern might work from home and never meet us just didn't. I don't think it was high on people's lists of things to do. And many places did and are doing them now. But I think just keep banging on lots of doors and maybe think about other routes in, as I did however many years ago, not really knowing what agenting was. Think about different routes in. I think editorial is going to be hard. I mean, it just is.
Yeah.
Everyone wants a bit of editorial, although I did not. So maybe there's a lot more of me out there. And I think think about marketing, think about sales, think about rights. All of these are really useful skills in any part of publishing. It's always useful to know how another department operates.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking from experience, obviously. I don't know how anyone's doing anything outside of agenting. But I'd say that's a really good way to kind of get in, just by maybe something that you hadn't planned on.
Yeah, that makes sense. And other people I've spoken to have said that similar things. First of all, you've got to immerse yourself and just try and get as much experience doing as much as you can, meeting as many people as you can, but also just sort of have a look in. Don't be too picky, and you can always sort of move around once you're sort of inside. It's much easier to go laterally once you're in the door.
Definitely, yeah. And I think reach out to people and ask them for a chat. I mean, you might not get everyone come back to you, but when I was starting out, Donald Winchester, who I work with now, said to me, just to reach out to people and ask them for a coffee, ask them for a chat. It wasn't long ago that they were in the same position as you. Yeah. You might find that some of them don't have time, but you'll find that, there's a lot of them that will meet you or have a phone call or something. And I did just that, and I spoke to a fair few people, and I try to do that now. Be open to people sort of sliding into my DMs and asking me questions, and sort of try to be quite visual and quite open and quite transparent and reachable. For all sorts of people, not just authors, but also people wanting to get in, because it can feel a bit like a impenetrable fortress where it just you kind of think you understand how publishing works, but then something happens and you think, oh no, maybe I don't at all. And I think from an outside perspective, there's so much that maybe isn't clear. We need to all be better at making that clearer for publishing hopefuls, I think. I think the general gist would be just reach out to people, speak to people, slide into people's DMs, mine included. They are always open, and just knock on a lot of people's doors and ask them for advice. I mean, if you're feeling bullish, favours. Can I come in? Can I have 10 minutes of your time? Can I get a coffee? I try to never say no to those kinds of requests within reason. And it's so easy now to Zoom, I think. I've Zoomed with a fair few people wanting to get into publishing in the past 2 years.
Oh, great.
And it's quite fun as well to think of your job in terms of explaining it to somebody else, which I so rarely do. Obviously, why would I do that? That would be really strange. But when someone's like, what's a day today look like for you? And I think, oh God, what does a day today look like for me? Emails mostly. But it's quite fun to have those conversations. I think people in publishing generally need to get better at welcoming people in and trying to make everything very transparent and very clear and helpful.
Yeah, because it's the way that the industry has evolved and grown over the years is kind of bizarre. It's not really like any other industry. There's lots of sort of stages and loops and things. It can be confusing.
Very, yeah. If you're not sure how something works, I think it can be very sort of impenetrable industry to understand. I mean, it seems like something it would be quite straightforward, but as with any industry, I suppose, there's lots of little quirks.
Yes, yeah. But people are, from my experience, people in publishing are very friendly and willing to help for the most part.
I think so, yeah. I think that's true. I definitely had that experience when I was starting out. People were very friendly. And even when I was sort of taking authors on at an assistant level or an associate level, I wasn't even quite an agent yet. The amount of authors that would, give me the time of day when I'm sure that they could have gone to someone who had that job title. Yeah. And then the amount of editors who would, not see, oh, she's not been promoted yet, but still meet me for a coffee or a meeting, or, include everyone in that kind of step up, because I think everyone kind of knows what it was like for them. It wasn't that long ago for a lot of people, so I think they keep that in mind, or I hope they do. Yeah.
Well, great advice in there about the industry and moving into it. So, are you currently open to submissions?
I am, yes. I am.
You are, okay. So March 2022, currently open to submissions. Are there any specific types of stories or characters that you're looking to add to your list this year?
Oh, so many. I always have. I think my eyes are big on my belly when it comes to looking for authors. I would love to find some more romance authors, however that might be, however sort of upmarket to commercial that might be. I'm just a sucker for a love story, and I think the industry is starting to belatedly realise that romance authors are quite good and that readers do really like romance books.
Yeah.
On the kids side, I'm always looking for, and I don't know why I haven't found this yet, but I'm really looking for some, like a funny female voice in middle grade, kind of a bit. Back in when I was younger, considerably younger, there was sort of Georgia Nicholson books, and there was loads of just like funny, jokey females in middle grade, and I haven't found something like that for a while, and I'd love to find that. I like all sorts of creepy things as well. I'm really looking for genre in YA. I think YA has gone through a bit of a renaissance recently. Maybe it hasn't. Maybe it's just me thinking it has.
I agree. I think from people I'm speaking to, it does feel like there's a renaissance happening.
Yeah, it used to be, is it dystopian or does it have some supernatural element? And that was kind of it. That was the sea of YA, that was kind of it. Now it seems like, dare I say it, there are genres happening in YA in much the same as adult fiction, which there should have always been. I mean, teenagers are not that far from adult readers, and adult readers read YA anyway, so the whole thing is very crossing over all over the place. But I'd love to find love stories in YA. I'd love to find some horror. I would really love to find some horror, actually. I don't really get sent a great deal of YA horror, but I would love to find that. I think I'm kind of open to all sorts, and I'll know it when I see it. And people do comment, Megan, you really should maybe slim down this huge wish list. So I've thought about it, but then I keep thinking, well, what would I get rid of? And I just can't bring myself to do it just yet. So I am open to lots of different things from all ages, and it will prove to be a problem, I'm sure, at one point. But that point is not now.
I think you can get away with it because there's this kind of weird thing with YA where people sort of see YA as a genre, whereas in theory it's a age bracket, not a genre. As you say, like it's being broken into genres now. So it kind of feels like you can, as an agent, say, I represent YA, and in that you're kind of encompassing all genres, which is fun. Yeah,
I think that's very true. And I think the same is said for middle grade. I think it's not one, it's not even a UK term, it's an American term. We don't even have middle school here.
No, we don't.
And I think they see middle grade as a genre as well. Is it middle grade or is it YA? And I think, what does that mean? What do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Which age group is it for? I've been quite clear in that, but I think it's genre is breaking through, and I think that's quite exciting. And it's not just dystopian or fantasy. But those are great too, and I hope they stay. But more is always great. More of everything, really.
Awesome. So to conclude, you would like more of everything? More of everything.
Yeah, I'm going to regret saying that, aren't I? That's me. More of everything. More of everything. Yeah, I would. It's my list is probably too big. Not big as in too many people, but too wide-reaching.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's cool.
I quite like changing it up each day. One day I'll work on a non-fiction, one day I'll work on a kids book, and another day I'll work on a horror for adults. I mean, it's quite fun doing it that way, I think.
Well,
she says.
She says. Oh, I mean, as they say, variety is the spice of life.
Well, indeed, exactly. And that's I've really taken that to heart with building my list. Variety
it must keep it exciting.
It does, yeah.
Different stuff.
Full on, but yes, exciting.
Yes. Brilliant. Well, I hope that's helpful for anyone looking to submit to you. And that brings us on to the final question, which, as always, is, Megan, if you were stranded on a desert island with a single book, which book would you take?
Can't begin to tell you how much I hate this question. And I'm sure every agent that you've spoken to has probably said that.
Most of them, yeah. Yeah, I think I've given lots of agents sleepless nights thinking about this.
Truly, and I've asked so many people, and they've really been not very helpful. And I thought about trying to cheat and trying to get someone's entire collection. And my assistant Kira was like, I don't think you can do that. That's not That's not the game we're playing.
People
here.
are always trying to cheat. You can
So I
tell
was
me
like-
what it would be, and then pick
even
one.
that I couldn't decide. Even that I was like,
okay.
I still don't know. I was like trying to make it easier for myself, but actually ended up being more difficult. Part of me, the weird thing is that the one book that came into my head, and I think more because I think it would be funny to read it on a desert island, was Lord of the Flies. And I thought that would be a fun book to read in that setting. It would be a very meta experience and quite odd. Yeah. But also it's very short, so I don't know that is maybe the option for me. It would take me about 2 hours to read, and then I'd be like, and now what?
Yeah, now read it again.
And there, now back again. I think I'd probably get quite a lot out of it, but maybe in a more what not to do on the desert island than what to do. And then
you'd be by yourself as well, so it wouldn't be that relatable.
It would be. I think it would be quite a fun read in the night times, particularly. I thought, okay, what would I? Then I kind of went through. There's loads of huge, thick books I've never read, and should I maybe pick one of those? And then I thought, no, that's so boring. What if I don't like them?
Yeah.
And then I came back to kind of like classics, and for like comfort, it's probably going to be maybe a Jane Austen, which is so boring, but that probably will be what I choose.
There's a reason that like Jane Austen is so kind of loved and just comfortable. It's
I
just
think,
great.
And I think it's one of those. She's one of those authors that I could, if I wanted to read it as a straight love story one day, I could do that. But if I wanted to read it as a real satirical, isn't the way the world works a disgrace, you could read it like that too. And I think you could read it in really loads of different ways.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about that, but then I also then thought which one, and then I went down a real rabbit hole of different options, and I was like, oh, is it going to be Emma, or is it going to be Pride and Prejudice, or is it going to be Sense and Sensibility? I think maybe Emma.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, I really just dislike this question, Jim. If you'd ask me the next, and I think I'd have a different answer every single day.
Yeah. Oh, I feel the same way. Yeah. I'm always asking people, but if anyone asks me, it's like, well, it depends on the week. Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the week. It depends on the mood.
Yeah. It depends what I've just read as well. A lot of the time that affects it.
Yes, exactly. So it would either be Emma or Lord of the Flies, depending on my mood, which is quite a combination of books.
An interesting range.
Yeah, I think so.
That's great. Well, I like that. I like how thoroughly you thought about it.
I'm still thinking about it. I'm still not even happy with my answer.
You'll continue thinking about it for the rest of time. Well, thank you so much, Megan, for coming on the show and sharing your experience with me and everyone listening. It's been really great chatting with you.
Pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. And for anyone listening, if you want to keep up with everything that Megan is doing, you can follow her on Twitter at Megan A. Carroll, and that's 2 R's and 2 L's, or go to her website, megan-carroll.com. If you're thinking about submitting, head over to Watson Little's website for the detailed submission guidelines, as well as their full list of agents, and make sure that you do follow the guidelines because you wouldn't want to fall at the first hurdle. To make sure you don't miss an episode of this podcast, follow us on Twitter at Right and Wrong UK or on Instagram at Right and Wrong Podcast. Thanks again to Megan, and thank you to everyone listening. We'll catch you on the next episode.
The regular season is heating up. New stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection on a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's that easy. Let it fly to turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Watch your favorite players and get paid doing it this basketball season. See your entries make progress during the game or make new entries for the second half and the fourth quarter. 3-pointers, assists, rebounds, and everything in between are yours for the taking. Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.